If you're a solo business operator and you're waffling between 2 or more audiences to focus on for your social media content, you know you need to focus on one ideal client, but you're just not sure who it should be, then stick around. My name is Candice Davis Blackman. I'm a content marketing strategist, and over the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how to identify your ideal client. And I had this client that came to me one time. She was in the beauty niche, and traditionally she would have 2 categories of clients come to her. She would have what she would call a professional group, and she had an elderly group of persons, and she can decide which group to focus on for her Instagram content. And maybe you're in the same situation where in the real world you have different groups of clients coming to you, and you know that you want to hone in on one ideal client group for social media because you don't have the time to be creating separate groups of content for separate and different audiences. But at the same time, you're thinking, I don't want to leave out the group that may be the group that's the most profitable for you. You're afraid of leaving money on the table. So you're in 2 minds about it, and you're not sure which group to focus on as your ideal client. I have a very simple rubric that you can follow that can help you really streamline who you should be focusing on. But before we get into that rubric, let's step back a bit and first clarify what we mean by an ideal client. And I'm going to be referring to my notes here. But an ideal client is really a person or a business who values your services, someone who benefits from your services as well, and someone who you really enjoy working with. Okay, so these are 3 things that we're pointing out here. They must value your expertise. They must get a lot of benefit from the solution that you offer, and you have to enjoy working with this group. So here's some characteristics of your ideal client. And actually, as I go through these characteristics, it's probably going to start to solidify in your mind who your ideal client should be. Maybe you may not even need a rubric. Just by hearing what the characteristics of your ideal client is, you may be able to start crystallizing in your mind the group that you should be focusing on as your ideal client. But the first characteristic of your ideal client is that they should align to your strengths and your values. So apart from them just needing the specific services that you offer, they should really resonate with your style of operating. Every person has a unique way of operating. You have a unique approach, you have a unique methodology, the way that you'll go about delivering your services to your audience, and your ideal client is going to be those people or those businesses who really gravitate towards that style. For example, in my own business, I have a very methodical style. I go step 1, step 2, step 3, because I know that my ideal clients love that sort of clarity. They love knowing what's the first thing they have to do and second step that they have to do, because it paints a clear picture for them as to what they need to do. And so I know my ideal clients are those people who prefer that, they want that, and they also want the personalized feedback that I give them as they go through these steps. So you need to sit down and think about what's your approach, and who of these different groups of people that you're thinking about, which of those people best appreciate that approach and really love the style that you use in the delivery of your services. The second characteristic of your ideal client is that they derive maximum benefit from your services. Listen, everybody has some sort of problem, challenge, obstacle, or goal or desire that they're trying to meet. And in your business, there is a problem, a challenge, a goal, or desire that you would have identified as the main priority for your business that you solve for. Whatever is that thing that you prioritize, your ideal client also prioritizes the same thing. So you need to look at there, where is that alignment? Who is that ideal client group who's looking to solve the problem that you are solving for, or who's looking to get to that desire or goal that you have identified as the top goal or priority for your business. And the third characteristic of your ideal client is that they must fit your business model. By that I mean, they should be easily able to afford your services, they should be ready to invest in themselves, and they should also match the level of engagement that you require for them to give in order to get the value that they need to get out of your services. For example, are you the type of business owner who requires that your people meet with you every 2 weeks for maybe an hour and a half? Then your ideal client has to be ready to do that. They have to be willing to put aside that time and be mentally ready to engage with you within that period. Or maybe you require them to come to your place of establishment and they need to come come at a specific time, then your ideal client is going to be those type of people who honor that, right? And who are prepared to do that. So whatever you require of your ideal client in terms of their interaction and engagement with you in order to properly deliver the service, your ideal client should be ready and on board to be able to do whatever you require them to do. And the fourth characteristic of your ideal client is that the experience that you have working with them should be an enjoyable one. Collaborating with your ideal client should be an enjoyable, productive, and energizing experience. When you think about your ideal client, it should never be a case where you're dreading showing up to work with them. You feel like you have to drag them along. You're not really wanting to work with them today. No. When you think about your ideal client, you should be excited to want to work with them, all right? Because that excitement is going to make working with them a lot easier, and deriving the benefit that you deliver in your service is much easier. So you've just got to enjoy working with this group of people. And if you start thinking about it, maybe there's one group that is probably coming to mind. Like, which group do you feel most excited about? You know, that's a very good indicator that they are the ideal client that you should be focusing on. And then the fifth and final characteristic of your ideal client is that they really should be helping you sustain the long-term viability of your business. So what do I mean by that? Your ideal client is the type of person or business who will readily refer you to other clients so that you have a steady stream of business moving forward. Or they may be the type of people or business who is ready to engage in longer term contracts with you, like they are willing to become repeat clients, or they are the type of people or businesses who are often really excited to give you a testimonial or a review when you ask them to. And these are all the types of things that help the long-term viability of your business. If you are finding that the type of people that you're thinking about, they don't really want to become repeat clients or long-term clients, or you have to run them down to be able to give you a testimonial or a review, or they're hard-pressed to refer you to others, and this is not really an indicator of a group of people who are really your ideal clients. Your ideal clients really help your business succeed. They are part of the long-term potential of your business, and they are really long-term engagers with your business. They are helping your business long after they've even derived value as a client within your business. Let's get into the rubrics or the criteria that you can use to narrow down exactly who your ideal client should be in terms of the content that you should be focusing on your social media. And I've got 4 basic criteria, and actually you could think about them as questions that you can use to rate the different audiences that you have in mind. So these 4 criteria, 4 questions are: how excited am I to work with them? How easily can they afford my services? In general, how aware are they of the need for my services? And finally, is this audience large enough to be profitable? All right, so I'm going to take you through exactly how you apply this rubric to the audiences that you have in mind so that you're able to narrow down your ideal client. So now for each of these questions, you're going to rate them on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being on the low end and 5 being on the high end for each of the audiences that you have in mind. So let's take it in order. So for the first question, how excited am I to work with this group? 1 would represent not excited at all. You're not at all excited to work with this group. A rating of 2 would mean that you're minimally excited to work with this group. 3 would be you're somewhat excited, so it's middle of the road. 4 would be you're quite excited to work with this group. And 5 would be the very top end, you're extremely excited to work with this group. So think of these audiences that you have in mind, rate them from 1 to 5 based on this first criteria. How excited are you to work with them? All right. And then the second criteria or second question, how easily can they afford my services? So again, you're going to rate the audiences that you have in mind from 1 to 5 on this criteria. Before you do that, just to add a little bit of context, now there are a few questions that you can ask yourself to properly think through the ability of persons to be able to afford your services. You need to ask yourself, do you offer a high-end or a low-end service? If you offer a high-end service, then this question of affordability matters a whole lot more, and you have to think through very carefully if these audiences that you have in mind can afford it or not. Now, if this is a type of audience that is in a high income profession, that means that they likely have more disposable income to be able to afford your services. Or maybe they require a license to practice, such as maybe they're in the medical profession or the engineering profession. And those types of professions that require license to practice tend to be on the higher end in terms of income, which makes them more likely to be able to afford your services. Maybe the people that you're going after has a university degree or college degree. And again, this is another indicator of their capability of affording your services if your services are more on the premium end, they're on the high end. All right. So these are just some questions to help you figure out whether the group that you're thinking about is able to afford your services or not. But in terms of the actual rating criteria, number one for this particular question would represent them not being able to afford your services at all. So they cannot afford your services. A number two rating would mean that they can barely afford your services. So they're just scraping by and just able to make affording your services. 3 would mean that they can somewhat afford your services. 4, a rating of 4 would mean that they can quite likely afford your services. And a rating of 5 on the very top end would mean that they can very much afford your services. Okay, on to the third criteria, third rating question, which is how aware are they of the need for your services? So a little bit of context here. The more someone is aware of the need for your services, they're aware of how valuable the solution that you provide is for them, the more likely they are to be an ideal client. So you need to ask yourself this question. Put yourself in this frame of mind to be able to apply this rating correctly. Think of the audiences that you have. If you were to meet a person within this audience, do you find yourself having to give a lengthy explanation as to what your service is all about and why it matters? If you find that you have to do that, then you'd have to rate these people on the lower end. Okay? And on the low end, what we mean by that is a rating of 1 means that they're not aware at all of the need for your services. All right? A rating of 2 would mean that they are slightly aware. 3 would mean that they are somewhat aware. 4, they are quite aware. And 5, these people would be extremely aware of your services. Like I said, the more aware a group of people are of the need and the value for your services, the more likely they are to be an ideal client for you to focus on social media. And our fourth and final rating question would be, are they large enough to be profitable? So you need to think of the groups that you have in mind. Are they sufficient in terms of number to support your business long term? Remember, you're on a social media platform and you need to have a sizable amount of people within your ID client group on that social media platform for you to even have a chance of reaching them and engaging with them in sufficient numbers for it to make sense for marketing your business. So one of the ways in which you can figure this out is by using an ad tool. Now, every social media platform usually has an advertising tool that helps you sort of gauge an estimate of how many people in your audience are on that platform. So, for example, if you are marketing your business on Instagram or Facebook, there is the Ads Manager tool. And if you are familiar with that tool, ever use that tool and you're trying to create an ad, there's a section in the ad set level where you have to enter in some information about your audience, such as the location of your audience, the age range of your audience, demographics, behaviors, interests of your audience. And as you enter this information, the Ads Manager tool is going to generate a size, an estimated size of that audience on the platform. It's the very same for LinkedIn's ads tool, TikTok's ad manager tool, and even Pinterest's ads manager tool, even Google's ad manager tool. All of these tools usually are able to generate an estimated size of the audience when you enter in certain information, giving parameters around your audience. Now, if you're not familiar with an ads manager tool on the platform of choice that you're on, then another way that you can go about, a rudimentary way that you can go about sort of gauging the size of the audience is to think about how many other players are within your niche on the platform. Because generally, if there are many other persons doing what you do, then that's a good indicator that the size of the audience that you're thinking about is quite a good size for you to focus on, because your competitors would not be trying to go after an audience if it weren't viable for them to go after. So you can just sit and think about it. If you think about the number of players within your arena, in your location that do what you do, if there are quite a few players, then you can satisfy yourself knowing that there is a good sized audience that would be large enough for you to be profitable on that social media platform. So in terms of the rating itself, a rating of 1 for this question of whether your audience is large enough to be profitable, a rating of 1 would mean that there's no data available. You simply cannot gauge how large this audience is. And that may be the case if you're very new, if it's a new service that you're offering and you really have no idea of how many people are in this audience, how many people will be interested in what you have to offer. A rating of 2 would mean that the audience is too narrow to be profitable. A rating of 3 would be that you have a good sized audience to move forward with. A rating of 4 would mean that the audience is quite broad, and a rating of 5 on the high end would mean that your audience is very broad. So there you have it. Those are your 4 criteria, rating criteria for narrowing down who your ideal client should be for focusing your social media content. And I'd like you to just take a look at the screen and you'll see a summary of that rating table. So you see on the left-hand column, the rating questions, all 4 of them, and you'll see the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 through to 5. And I've explained what each of those ratings mean. So you see it right in a summary rating table there, and you can go ahead and snap a picture of it and keep that as a reference for you as you go about rating the different audiences that you have in mind. And I have here on the screen as well an example of how this rating works. These are 4 possible target audiences for a finance coach. And the finance coach is trying to figure out which of these 4 audiences are Michigan or location-based audience, Michigan audience, or Christian audience, female audience, or business owner audience. They're trying to figure out which of these 4 audiences they should move forward with. And as you can see, they've rated each of these audiences on each of those 4 questions. And you see, after doing that, you total the score that each audience would have gotten on each question. So this Michigan-based audience got a total of 16. The Christian-based audience got a total of 12. The female-based audience got a total of 21. And the business owner audience got a total of 13. And that's exactly what you need to do. After you would have scored the audiences that you have in mind on these different criteria, you're going to total the scores, and the audience that comes up with the highest score is the audience that you should move forward with as your ideal client audience to focus on. So in the case of the finance coach, the female audience totaled the highest with 21, and so this means that the finance coach can move forward with targeting this female audience. You see that this rating is subjective, and it's designed to be subjective. That's okay. Answer it to the best of your ability with the knowledge that you have, and move forward with the scores that you do have. Because at the end of the day, you need to enjoy the group that you are creating content for, and the group that ultimately you want to work with and see more of coming into your business. If you have a case where you have 2 audiences that score closely, or maybe they score the same, then I would encourage you to use this rubric. You break the tie by looking at the group that you feel the most compassion for. The group that you feel the most sympathy, the most pity for, that's a group that I believe that you should go after. And if you're a Christian business owner, like I am, there's precedent for this. There are places in the text, in the Bible, where it talks about Jesus being moved with compassion. And after he was moved with compassion, he ministered to the groups of people who he was moved with compassion for. By ministering, he healed the sick, or he fed them. He took action after he was moved with compassion. Now, Jesus loved everybody. Jesus is love. God is love, right? And we're all commanded as Christians to seek the best for one another and to have love for one another. But there are certain instances where your heart is filled up and you feel a deep sense of compassion for people. And usually that is God moving on your heart to act. Let's look at Matthew 15:32, where it says that, "Then Jesus called his disciples unto him and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me now 3 days and have had nothing to eat, and I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint on the way." So these people had been with Jesus for 3 days, and he was adamant that he was not going to send them away hungry. It says that he had compassion for them. And you know what happened? After this came the miracle feeding of the 5,000. After this text talks about Jesus moving with compassion, a miracle feeding of the 5,000 happened, where Jesus fed 5,000 people. And actually, it was more than 5,000 people if you count the women and the children. So I'm saying to you that if there's a particular group you have in mind that you feel the most compassion, the most sympathy, the most pity for, I believe that it is God moving on your heart to help these people. And I think you'll be aligned with God and with your faith if you move forward working with these people who you feel the most compassion and sympathy for. I'd like to encourage you to get my ebook, Nail Your Target Audience for Social Media. Because of time, I really couldn't go into all the details that you would really need to develop a complete profile of your ID client. But this ebook takes you through the questions that you need to answer in order to do that, as well as it gives you several ways in which you can research your ID client so that you will be able to develop content that targets them for social media. Click the link in the description, and once it's still available, it will take you to a product page where you can purchase the ebook. It costs only $7. It will give you additional information that will really help you develop a complete picture of your ID client so that you can create content that targets them on social media. I'm also offering you a free Excel sheet so that you can actually carry out the rating exercise that we spoke about today. The Excel sheet is already set up in such a way that all you have to do is enter the audiences that you have in mind and the score for each of these audiences, and it will automatically total the scores that you have put in for your audiences. It's totally available for free. All you need to do is click the link in the description and enter in your email so that you join my email list and get automatic access to the Excel sheet. Now, if you're in a state of mind where you're thinking, look, I really just need someone's help to be able to pull together a content marketing strategy so that you can properly market your business on social media and reach and engage your ideal clients. Well, I do offer that service. So I'm inviting you to set up a call with me. And on that call, I'll take you through the different ways that we can possibly work together to build and launch your content marketing strategy in as little as 7 weeks. Click the link in the description. You'll just have to answer a few questions to help me prepare for that call. You pick a date and time that's convenient to you. We'll meet. I'll get to hear more about what your goals are, and then we put together a roadmap for how we can work together to help you achieve that.